welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and joining us in studio today is Andy Pollock. He is the president, and I want to make sure I get this right, LGBTQ Plus Network here on the South Coast. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
It's Pride Month coming up.
Yes, we're on Pride Eve.
Pride Eve, that's good. Lots of activities coming on, but the network itself has grown tremendously.
Yes.
And so there's a lot to talk about here. Let's just start right now with Pride Month. Get that out of the way, and then we can talk about some of the issues. June 4th is the day in New Bedford. And you have others throughout the month too. I know Taunton's having their first one.
On June 11th.
So tell us a little bit about the month.
Right, so we start off with art at Gallery X. We have a big soiree at Round the Bend Farm on the 3rd. It's out in the wild, W-I-L-D-E, Oscar Wilde.
Yeah, exactly.
We're doing a theater piece and a buffet and, you know, kind of nice cocktail-y thing. So that's going to be in the evening, and then the next day is Pride in New Bedford. The day after that, Sunday the 5th, is Pride in Fall River. The Zeiterion is doing 4 LGBT-themed films, all around the titles of ships, so friendship, relationships, things like that. We did a drag story hour in Taunton, which was very successful, a little controversial, but very successful. And we also, Taunton Pride on the 11th, and we have surf camp for the kids. There's a week-long surf camp. There's reflections on spirituality with a rabbi from Taunton, and just a myriad of events that those are the highlights.
Yeah. What is the, I guess, the objective of these events?
So, great question. You know, Pride started in June because of Stonewall, which was the first time that gays fought back. The bars,
69, I think, right?
69, right on Judy Garland's death. Some people think there's related, who knows? But there was a bar that the police were raiding, which was standard practice in the day, and the patrons fought back. They weren't going to be arrested this time. So hence June is always kind of the tradition in this country for Pride. So that's our roots, and I think the first one was obviously a political, and we're moving more. I think the culture is moving a little bit more away from the political and more of a festival, at least, feel for us.
Yeah, I was going to say it's more of a street fair, to be honest.
We have 100 vendors.
Yeah,
it's going to be amazing in New Bedford, and Fall River and Taunton be great.
Taunton's having its first one.
Yes,
and so that's a big deal.
The mayor has moved in her support of LGBT. And we're really excited about the opportunity to have Hopewell Park. We have a lot of vendors. It's really exciting, and I think the Taunton community is ready.
South Coast Network covers a lot of areas. For folks that don't know, what are you looking at? What are your community bases?
We look at from Providence to the Bridge and up to Taunton as our catchment area.
Okay, and there's when you think about it, how many people are part of the organization, part of the network?
Yeah,
there's a lot of people.
Yeah, we don't have a formal membership, but we figure that there's about 25,000 LGBT folks in our area. So when we do live casts, shows, sometimes we'll get 5,000, 6,000 hits. It's amazing. So getting the word out is really great for folks, especially younger folks who are questioning either sexual orientation or gender identity. We have supports and programs for you. If you're a person who's interested in helping, whether you're gay, straight, or whatever, we're welcoming folks to help volunteer. So it's a wonderful organization.
You do have a lot of support groups, and tell us, I mean, you just touched on a little bit, but tell us a little bit about some of the programs that the network offers for people, all people.
Yeah, we're so excited about this. We identified 3 populations that are vulnerable. So the first is transgendered community. And when we started about 3 years ago, there were no services that we were providing. Now we have support groups, we have a parent group, we do Trans Day of Visibility, we do Trans Day of Remembrance, both in New Bedford and Fall River did one. In fact, we had a whale community forum, and one woman was saying, trans, 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 all you're doing is stuff for trans. And I'm like, well, no, we're doing more than that. But it is great to provide services for those, for that population. Secondly, we were working with youth. It's called Elevate Youth Program. And we have social workers in most of the middle schools and high schools, at least a day a week. If the child has an issue around sexual orientation or gender identity, we call it SOGI, they can talk with the social worker, get the parents involved, get the kids involved in group, get the family. The goal is to keep the family together and mitigate homelessness. However, there is a lot of homelessness on the street for LGBT kids, or they're couch surfing. So we want to identify it, take care of it, or solve it. And then with the youth, there's also youth groups, there's programs for development and community participation. So training these kids to be community leaders in the future, because I don't want to be doing this in 20 years. Third piece is our elder population. We have a senior supper club for folks, it's probably 55 and above, because I go on occasion.
That means you're old. I'm just saying. No.
I'll take it. So for the elder population, there's specific needs. We're hiring a social worker to work with the population in the South Coast to, sometimes it's around food security, sometimes it's around technological barriers or socialization. And we want to make sure that these folks who have been through so much live out their final days in a wonderful, joyful, abundant life versus having to go back into the closet.
It must be the difference between talking to youth dealing with the issues versus dealing with the elderly. I mean, it's a really 180 degrees difference.
It is. It really is. We wanted, when the network started in 2014, we wanted to get everyone's ideas of how this, a name for the organization. And the younger kids want to call it the queer, like New Bedford Queer or whatever, South Coast Queer. And the older folks were like, oh no. That's a really dirty word for us. I mean, that's a real pejorative. So we ended up putting the Q on the bottom, and the Q could be for whatever, but queer, questioning, or what have you. But it was a real generational
I was going to say,
rub.
Is there generational, I don't want to say arguments, but disagreements between those that are older and those that are younger about how things are done and what's done, that sort of thing?
We try to integrate everyone.
Right.
So we do intergenerational brunches. There's intergenerational prom going on in Fall River. And we're putting together a community center, which we can talk about a little later. But the idea is that it would be for all ages. So older folks, younger folks, whatever, mingling together. So that the wisdom that the older elders have can be passed on to the younger kids. And then the technological savvy of the younger.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Can you fix all this? But that and the youth and the excitement and the freedom can be also shared to the older population. We don't seem to have a rub, but we want to really make it a positive, really strong connection, and
it's like that just in general with older versus younger. We're not even talking about this. I mean, you talk to somebody 70 and you talk to somebody that's 20 right now, and it's like, listen, my life was a lot different than yours, kid.
Exactly. One of the things that I find important is that, unlike other minorities, we're not born into the family that we come from, so or like that we identify with. So, for instance, my parents were straight. They had a gay kid. It sort of was like the giraffe in the dairy barn. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have to find your others that are gay and lesbian and trans. So that there is a little bit of history that gets lost as one generation passes. So we are committed to recording history. We actually have about 7 recorded documents of people telling their life stories, which is wonderful. Like, where were the gay bars in the 1950s? What was it like to go to Providence and the bars when in the 70s? And what was it like in Provincetown? So those sort of oral records that are so important for us. I think it's really exciting for the kids to see this.
Yeah. I was asking you off camera, it seems the perception, at least I see, is that New Bedford and the surrounding communities seem to be accepting of the community, the gay community in general. And I don't obviously know the issues, but it just seems there's more things happening in this area than perhaps other places.
It's amazing. We are putting together a community center that it's incredibly unique.
Right in the heart of downtown.
Right in the heart of downtown, Sister Rose's old homeless shelter. And that there isn't something like that in Massachusetts. The closest community center is in Connecticut.
Really?
And so we'll be the third in New England. There's 2 in Connecticut and we'll be the third.
Wow.
So there's nothing like it in Massachusetts or Boston or anywhere. And with what we're doing with the programs and the populations, it's really fantastic. It's a blast.
We were talking with Andy Pollock from the SouthCoast LGBTQ Network here in studio. What is, because I know that obviously you're working on the community center.
Yes.
What's the end of it? What do we see inside of that? It's a good sized building.
It's a wonderful building. I've really spent so much time there. It's feeling like home, but it's a wonderful structure with a slate roof, crafted cement blocks. We've ordered windows, so they're going to be lovely design. We're working with Whale to make sure they're historically
right.
Correct.
It's a historic building, correct?
Historical, yes. And we're starting inside bids to mock up the design we're going to have a commercial kitchen. There'll be an elevator. There'll be office space.
Is it 3 floors?
There's will be 4 floors.
4 floors?
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously there'll be office space, but I'm sure there's going to be other.
Yeah, community space, gathering space. We'll have a studio and office space. They do a live show. Done about 100 shows. We've taken a little hiatus. We're hoping that once we get the studio open, we'll be back online.
So with all the programs that you have, that you offer right now, they will go into the community center and the offices. So there'll be places now for people to go to meet, to have whatever sessions or just
yoga,
group events,
dinners, breakfast, Pride Cafe. We're hoping to use the kitchen to both film good cooking and healthy eating patterns, and also as a venue to hang out and have coffee, or to serve dinners for the elders or what have you. We're looking at renting the commercial kitchen at night as an income generating source for the building in general. Then there's office space that we'll be renting. We're hoping to rent to LGBT friendly or specifically LGBT therapists, lawyers, accountants, or whatever. Especially on our 3rd floor, we'll have 5 offices, and they can provide services. So if there's someone who comes in and they need a referral for mental health, or they need a referral to a nurse practitioner, or they need a referral for an accountant, it's right in the same building. So it's kind of a perfect
one-stop shopping. Really,
exactly.
When you think about it, yeah.
I suspect that we will grow into it as the programs develop and more.
It sounds like you have so many programs too that the space is going to fill up quick.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking as well.
Talk to us now in general about when you look at the issues that you're facing. What are some of the, because like I said, you're not seeing what you did 50 years ago, but I'm sure it's still there. So what are the biggest challenges that you're facing as an organization representing people? I
think you're right. In this area in the South Coast, I did a lot of marriage equality work, and when there was a positive story about equal marriage, there'd have to be a story opposing equal marriage, right? So, or if there was a positive editorial, there had to be a negative editorial. You don't see that anymore. You don't see, at least here, you don't see the anti-LGBT protests that we used to.
The marriage seems to be a success. I mean, there's no other way to describe it, really. Life has gone on. There's been no issues that...
It's hysterical to read the old articles that people were writing in saying that crime was going to increase because, because my husband and I got married and we lived quietly on a farm in Dartmouth. How
crime goes up. Exactly.
Crime goes up. So yeah, and I think in the gay community as well that marriage has brought stability and has brought a sense of responsibility that wasn't there before. So, plus, well, it's done for the flower and wedding industry business, so they should have been behind it years ago. However, we do see national trends that are disturbing with laws against trans individuals. There's hundreds of those being enacted. Don't say gay bills in 15 states across the country. Punitive actions against parents who are trying to sort out their trans children.
And you were telling me off camera, I didn't mean to interrupt you, you were telling me off camera that there is a difference between, in a sense, gay and the transgender community. It's tougher for them right now.
I would say that they are getting the brunt of the anti-legislation, and I think it's just fear-based, and perhaps people don't know, or they might not know they know a trans individual. The murder rate for trans women in the United States is crazy. Last year I think there were just under 50 women that were murdered in the United States, trans women. The life expectancy of a black trans woman is 36. Wow. It's incredible. In the United States, I mean, anyway, but I do think in New Bedford we're providing services and working with the police if there's an issue, and working with the trans community. And what's interesting is that sexual orientation and gender identity are not the same thing.
Correct.
So some trans folks are gay, some trans folks are straight. So there is a mesh in between, mingling. But
and you were talking about the trends.
Definitely is trending up, and I think it's become more acceptable for the younger generation and more accessible and more socially acceptable in general. People are transitioning more. Yeah.
But like you and I were talking about Florida, where the Don't Say Gay bill was signed by the Governor DeSantis. And you were talking about how the valedictorian in one of the classes talked about the issue without saying the word. Talking about curly hair, it was a great speech for people who haven't seen it. But it's interesting that, you were talking Alabama as another one.
Yeah, there's different laws that are going in effect. Alabama and Texas have, and I think Idaho tried it, and they're all happening so quickly. I'm not up as each current state, but those in particular, Texas and Alabama, if you have a child that's struggling with their gender identity, it's a crime for you to take them to a therapist to work it out. I mean, it's incredible. Right. That you're a parent. Can you imagine that? Your child says to you, "Look, I'm suicidal. I think I'm in the wrong," and you want to do anything you could to make sure that this child reaches their full potential, and you can go to jail for it. Right. And Alabama's the same. It's insane to me. I don't get it. I find it cruel, and I find it somewhat punitive.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the interesting thing too is that, as you were talking about, we were talking about the abortion law that seems to be being overturned, and now the trend could be that a lot of these other states are going to come up with gay marriage or whether it's transgender. I mean, they're going full bore with all this stuff now. Oh, well, that's the worry.
No, but yeah, you're right. And I think let's step back a little bit. The precept is already there. You are different. You are different. You are. And if you can't talk about, never mind if Johnny has two dads or two moms, but even just the kid who's sitting there who realizes that there were gay people in history, that Alexander the Great or Hadrian or Achilles, or all these heroes were gay, or Eleanor Roosevelt, or whoever these people were, that there were gay people that contributed to history, and that gay people can lead normal, healthy lives, versus, making it sound like it's bad,
right,
and wrong and immoral and just hushed and taken away. That's where we're starting, and so why not go for marriage? If we're going to start, if that's where our precepts are, that's where our thought pattern is. I can see them just saying, absolutely.
But as I said to you, and it was interesting, off camera when we were talking, I think the general perception is, for example, with gay marriage, I don't see people, because it's been around now for a while, I know people do care about it, but I think the majority of people are fine.
Yeah, I think Massachusetts, when we were working for marriage equality, we felt, and maybe this sounds grandiose, but I'll say it anyway, we felt like the nation was watching us, because we were the first.
Yep. It
was legislated by what was a court decision, and then there was a lot of turmoil. And we felt as LGBT folks that if we didn't succeed in allowing gay marriage to happen and continue to happen in Massachusetts, the rest of the country would have looked at us and said, see, they had it judicially given to them, and the population rejected it. It's not what we wanted. So
yeah.
Fortunately it stayed, but you look at the rhetoric back then, and it's just ridiculous what people were saying if gay marriage was going to happen. Crime was going to increase. There was the breakdown of the traditional family, et cetera, et cetera. And we've had it since 2004, and
life's gone on. It really
You're
has.
still married. I'm now married. Life is fine. So, but other states have had it since 2015, and that's a little
newer.
Yeah. And I think we do live in a different part of the country, where if we go to other parts of the country where it's more religiously preoccupied or it's more conservative, they might find it different.
Yeah. So how many states do have gay marriage right now? Do you know?
It's a federal, in 2015 it became the law of the land. There were a lot of states that were
I thought there were states that still prevented it.
No.
Okay. One of the things I was curious too is some of the when you go to an individual, when you talk to somebody who's dealing with this, any of these issues at the start, what are some of the things that you try to talk to them about? I know that depression is, you kind of mentioned depression and isolationism. What are some of those characteristics that people should look out for and people need to talk through just to help them get through the day in life, really?
Yeah, statistically, let's start with youth. The Mass Commission on LGBT Youth reported on 2021, if I'm not mistaken, has come out, and the statistics are not great. You would think that in Massachusetts we would have a better rate of inclusion and less bullying and all the rest of it, but it's there. The kids are more LGBT kids are more suicidal. They tend to be bullied in school. They tend to drop out of school. They tend to.
So the younger generation is seeing more of that than perhaps the middle, like 25 to, I'm just throwing ages out, 25 to 34 or something like that.
I also think that LGBT folks tend to have used in the past drugs and alcohol to alleviate some of the stresses, and it's been part of the culture. And then for the older folks, a lot of their world is shrinking. They may not have kids. They may be estranged from their families. So, all of these folks need to realize that there's help available for them. So whether you're a child who's having a rough time of it, reach out. Reach out to us. There's programs, there's mentors, there's all sorts of resources available. If you're a younger person and you're struggling with drug addiction or alcohol, reach out to us again. There's a lot of pressures in the LGBT community. You don't need to go to those resources. You can go to the positive ones. And for the elder population, if you're fearful, if you're isolated, reach out to us. We have plenty of things going on.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You were talking about like housing issues for the elderly. just the fear of being alone in the twilight of your life.
Yeah, there's a great movie called Gen Silent, and it was filmed in Boston. It talks about older LGBT folks. And in it is a story of a man who had a roommate who was in a nursing facility that was homophobic. So he was making all these homophobic slurs. So the guy's fearful. He asks his friends not to visit him, and he dies alone because he's fearful.
Right?
And what a way to go out. I mean, it breaks my heart. It really does. So that's not going to happen down here.
No, and it's just curious that, in a sense, when you look at the circle of life, I guess, in the general, I mean, you start out, you could face those issues of isolation and depression, and then you live a life, and then in your senior years, you could go back to where you started from.
Yeah, that's where the trends are. And if you look historically at what these folks have been through, it's astronomical. I mean, they've been through, when the DSM, it wasn't until the 70s that homosexuality was considered a psychological disorder. And then you had AIDS hitting in 1981. You had nothing happening for that for 15 years as people died like flies. And then don't ask, don't tell in the military. My husband had to leave the military to get married because for us to get married, that was considered telling, and telling meant a dishonorable discharge, and that meant losing your pension
Yep.
and your insurance and everything.
Right.
So, what these folks have been through, no wonder they're gun shy.
Right. Got about a minute left. I just want to give you a second to, again, repeat about Pride Month, some of the dates, and then if people have questions, where can they get in touch with you folks?
Well, I encourage people to reach out to us at the SouthCoast LGBTQ Network. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on our webpage. And if you're looking for resources, we have them. If you're looking for opportunities to volunteer, we have those as well. We want to wish everyone a happy Pride. New Bedford is going to be on the 4th. Fall River is on the 5th. Taunton is on the 11th. Look for different events during the month of June, and have a wonderful and happy month.
It's been great talking to you.
It's wonderful.
We'll talk again, I'm sure.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Andrew Pollock, our guest. I'm Jim Marshall, the New Bedford Cable Network. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.